Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl Ilov, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Today I wanted to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I have mentioned it briefly in a couple of previous episodes and went into a little bit more detail in my last episode about how changing our mind can actually change our life. And that is something called neuroplasticity, which means that we can actually interrupt patterns in our brain, patterns and habits that might not be serving us well, so we could introduce new patterns of not only moving, but sensing, feeling, and thinking, and we can improve the quality of our life in every single aspect of it. We can learn how to move better, feel better, think more clearly, be more active mentally, emotionally. We can even have the ability to cure ourselves from depression, from chronic pain, as well as a variety of different things that might be interfering with our ability to live a full and wonderful life. And one of the things that I found that is the mother lode of neuroplasticity, to be able to access this ability that we have deep inside of us, this natural miracle of nature that we have, is something that I discovered back in, I think it was 2000, and it is an amazing and remarkable method, and I really wanted to share it with you. It is something called Feldenkrais. Feldenkrais, the Feldenkrais method. Just the name itself is a mouthful, and let me tell you, it is really difficult to market the technique as well, because when people hear it, they think, oh my gosh, this is something that's some crazy, either some cultish type of thing, or maybe you're just going to hang crystals over me, or it just really sounds, it's very difficult to describe and to explain. When you hear people try and describe Feldenkrais, even practitioners of the method, sometimes your eyes just glaze over. You get a little bit of drool hanging out of the corner of your mouth. You have no idea what they're talking about because it makes absolutely no sense. I am a Feldenkrais practitioner, and I like to think that I have a fairly clear way of being able to describe it, so here it goes. This is what I tell people. Feldenkrais is a highly sophisticated form of neuromuscular re-education based on the scientific principle of neuroplasticity, which simply means that our brain and our nervous system is capable of learning new patterns of moving, sensing, feeling, thinking during the entire course of our lifetime. And of course, that sounds like a no-brainer. Duh. Well, of course we would be able to do that. But as recently as 25 years ago, we were taught in all of our neurology classes in physical therapy that this neuroplasticity existed in children, babies and children, but it disappeared at about the age of 14 and did not exist in adults. Well, we know now that that is not true because finally neuroscience has caught up with reality, and we know that our brain and our nervous system is capable of changing during the entire course of our lifetime. So what does this mean for you? I actually did talk about that and how this neuroplasticity can help us in my previous episode, Change Your Mind and Change Your Life. And now I wanted to focus on the Feldenkrais method so you can get an idea of what it is, how it works, and how it can help you. And as I already said, I had my first experience with Feldenkrais in the year 2000, and I had heard about the method before because in the dance community and even in the alternative health community, as a Pilates instructor, I had heard it mentioned before. I had no idea what it was or why I would possibly want to do it, but I ended up taking a 3-day Feldenkrais workshop for dancers in the spring of 2000. I had no idea what it was, what I was doing, but I just showed up, and I was a little confused the entire time. I didn't understand why I was lying on the floor and why the instructor was giving us these gentle suggestions and asking us questions about how we feel when we move, and honestly, it was almost even a little bit annoying at first. I just wanted her to be quiet, and I wasn't sure what was going on, but I did know that I was really enjoying the sensation of lying on the floor and making myself comfortable, because that's a concept I really wasn't used to. One of the things we do in Feldenkrais is we make ourselves comfortable, and I really had never even heard that before. And I was enjoying just the feel of the mat underneath me, and I know I just kept stroking it with my hands. All of a sudden, it was like my tactile sense had just awakened, and the room was really lovely. It was an old building with a hardwood floor and the windows and the light coming through. And for some reason, those things were really calling my attention as I was going through this 3-day-long workshop. And as I said, I really had no idea what was going on or why I was even there. But I will tell you that the end of those 3 days, I felt better than I had in years. My legs even felt longer. My hips and my back felt looser, and my mood was lighter. And this general feeling of well-being persisted for the next several weeks. And I began taking regular weekly Feldenkrais group classes from a local practitioner. And I still wasn't sure what was going on and what was happening to create this incredible new sense of well-being and vitality and even energy and less stress. But what I did know is that I really liked it, and I wanted it to continue. And I also knew that I had to become a practitioner so I could add that skill set, this wonderful method, to offer to my clients. But not only that, I wanted to be able to dig into it a little bit more deeply and find out why this was happening and what was going on. I'm a naturally curious person, and I figured becoming a practitioner was the only way to be able to get the kind of satisfaction and the answers that I wanted to this incredible method. And then I found out that the training program was 4 years long. The closest one to me was going to be in Santa Fe. They also had trainings in San Francisco, Chicago, New York, and a couple of other cities, but we would be required to get together for 2 weeks every 3 months for 4 years. So when you think about that, there is nothing local. You would be traveling to another city. You'd have to pay not only for your travel expenses, for room and board, and then the tuition. It was just not going to happen. I was still paying off my student loan for my physical therapy school. So I just figured it wasn't in the cards, at least not for right now. And I remember telling people that if they ever brought a training to the Denver area, that I would sign up in a heartbeat. Well, they did eventually bring a training to Denver, and I was one of the first students to apply for the program, and of course I was accepted, and I began my training in February of 2006. And there are so many things that makes Feldenkrais different from any other method, and I'm going to start bullet pointing them for you, because these are things that you can do for yourself at home and kind of play with and just see what this is all about and how you can start playing with some of these ideas. As I've already said, the most important thing in Feldenkrais is to make yourself comfortable, and that really goes against everything that we've been taught, especially when it comes to either exercise or movement or basically anything in life, that to be comfortable is a little bit self-indulgent. But if you are uncomfortable, for example, if you're instructed to lie down on the floor and if your head is behind yourself too much and it's straining your neck, or if your back is uncomfortable, your nervous system is going to be preoccupied with your discomfort, and it won't be able to take in any new sensation, new experience, or new patterns that you might be learning from the movement lesson. So even without ever even taking a Feldenkrais lesson, if you could get down on the floor every day, each and every day, and find a way to make yourself comfortable, either put pads up for to support your head, or to put rollers or pillows underneath your knees to take pressure off of your back, make sure that the room is warm enough for you, you're not too hot, you're not too cold, the dog isn't running across your face, or the cat, things like that. Your cell phone isn't on. Taking that time in a quiet room to really get down on the floor and make yourself comfortable. And why is the floor important? The floor gives you feedback. It's almost like you're lying on a giant mirror. So your nervous system is paying attention to the shapes of your body, the pressure of your body, the places where you're not contacting the floor, where you are contacting the floor. And you don't have to really be that cognizant of it. It's not your thinking part of your brain brain that's so important. It's actually your sensing and feeling part of the brain that's taking all of this in. So don't feel like you have to note every single sensation that's going on. If you're lying on the couch or on a bed, you're not going to get that same information into your nervous system because the weight of your body is being supported and sinking into the mattress or the couch. So it's going to give you false information. So that's why the floor is really important. And once you have made yourself comfortable, just pay attention to your breathing. What is your breathing like and how are you breathing? Are you breathing more with your chest, breathing with your belly? Are you holding yourself a little bit more rigid, even lying on the floor? And take the time just to breathe in and out nice and slowly, not to judge it. There's no right or way wrong of breathing. And I would always laugh when people would ask me, well, what's the right way to breathe? And the little sarcastic part of my brain would just shoot out, well, in and out is a really good place to start. So don't judge your breathing, just notice what is your pattern. And after a few minutes, you might even notice that your weight is starting to sink into the floor a little bit more, almost like it is being more accepting of the firmness of the floor, and that the floor becomes a little bit more accommodating and more comfortable for you. And when you're ready, you can just start to move just very, very gently, going from side to side and just paying attention to how you move. So that's another principle of Feldenkrais, is to move very, very slowly, because everything that we do in life is just fast forward. We're always on. We're always go, 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 go. And that means that our brain, our nervous system is constantly being bombarded with stimulus. So we can't pay attention to ourselves and we don't really know what's going on in our internal environment. And as you know, I'm really a geek about awareness. And that's what Feldenkrais really is. It is awareness through movement. So I snuck that in on you. I did a little sneaky ninja trick. And that's all that this is about, is awareness through movement. Of course, it's a little bit more complicated than that. We are training our awareness through movement. Another thing that is so unique to Feldenkrais is that we don't focus on our muscles. We focus on our skeleton and our nervous system. We don't even talk about strengthening our muscles or stretching our muscles because we're focusing more on moving from our skeleton. If you think about it, our skeleton, our skeletal structure, is what supports us. And our skeleton, our bones, and our joints are what move us through space. Our nervous system, our brain, and the nerves that are connected all the way down through our body is what is passing the signals along to our muscles. So the muscles just contract and relax in according to what our nervous system is telling us. So if you really want to drive a physical therapist crazy, you tell them this, that we don't focus on muscles, we focus on the skeleton, because the skeleton is actually what supports us and what carries us through space. I really had a lot of fun with that, especially when I was a brand new student. I would tell that and share that with all of my physical therapy friends, and you could just see their eyes rolling around in their heads going, bitty, 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 that can't be right. It's just a different way of approaching movement. So when you do something from a different perspective, you get a different result, and you get a lot more of, again, that awareness, that lighting up your nervous system, and that's where you can elicit a lot of the changes, a lot of the ease in your body, the ease of motion, the ease of movement. It really is truly amazing. And when you're moving so slowly, you get the time to really take in what's happening in your body, what's happening in the micro movements, because it's in your micro movements where the magic happens and where the change can actually occur. We're so used to working with the bigger muscles and the power muscles that are moving us throughout the day. But when we get down on the floor and we move very slowly, even just lying still and taking the time to relax, it gives those large, powerful muscles a chance to have a break, take a little vacation, and just turn off for a while, because oftentimes it's muscular imbalances that are causing pain, joint dysfunction, any type of stress, anxiety, fatigue, even disease. What is the definition of disease? It's dis-ease. ease. So once you can find a way to have ease in your body, it's a healthier body. Here's another principle of Feldenkrais that actually blew me away. The first time I heard of it, it was like, wow, it was just almost liberating. Because in Feldenkrais, there is no right or wrong way of doing things. There's no right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse, just opportunities to learn. And when I heard that, I swear a choir of angels began to sing, and I thought I was going to levitate, because every single thing I have ever done in my life has been very restricted. There are definitely harsh and direct and rigid guidelines, and I'm sure you understand. You're probably the same way and know what I'm talking about. But to approach something in a way that you're going to be learning, and then to have all of the expectations and all of the projected goals or outcomes taken away, is incredibly freeing. Like I said, it's just so liberating. But that's where the learning happens and the magic begins. There's even another thing that blew me away when I was in my training. We were even encouraged to fall asleep, that if we fell asleep during our training class, that was okay, because our nervous system was always listening. So they said, don't worry that you're going to miss some information. You won't. Your nervous system is always on. It's always taking information in. And that does relate back to what I said in my previous episode, is that if you're starting to give yourself negative messages, if you start to denigrate yourself or tell yourself negative things, even if you don't really mean it, and even if you're doing it in jest, your nervous system does not know the difference. It is taking it in and it is logging it. So once again, in Feldenkrais, there is no right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse, just opportunities to learn. And that is just a wonderful philosophy to live by, actually, because everything is a learning moment, not only in movement, but in life itself. And I always get annoyed when I hear people say, this is a teachable moment, because what I get out of that statement is, I am going to teach you, I am going to tell you what you have to learn from this experience or this conversation or whatever, instead of, it's a learnable moment. So we learn exactly what we need to at the exact time that we need to learn it, at whenever we are ready for it. So somebody trying to teach me something, and I see that there is that expectation at the end of it that I have got to listen to them, that just really rubs me the wrong way. But if they present something in a way that I can learn from it on my own and for myself, that is a beautiful thing, and that's where magic happens. And that's the way we learned how to move when we were children and babies even. Nobody told us exactly how to roll over in our crib, how to push ourselves up, eventually come to sitting or standing. We figured it out for ourselves because it was the way that we learned, and how we were exploring not only our own bodies, but our environment, and how to move in our environment, and how to relate to other people. And that is really something that kind of is taken away from us as we start to grow and to mature. So Feldenkrais takes us back to that self-exploration, that organic way of moving and figuring out how to move in a comfortable way and an easy way in our bodies, in our environment with other people, in our relationships. So that's a whole lot out of just laying on the floor, isn't it? So obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but this is just the beginning, and I wanted to share it with you, and I am so excited about this because it's wonderful information, and I truly have seen amazing things happen, not only in myself, but with the clients that I've worked with over the years, and it is just incredible what you can do with using this neuroplasticity and the Feldenkrais method to help you move better, feel better, think better, change your brain, be able to function at a much younger age than you actually are. It's just really incredible. So what I have been describing to you as far as getting down on the floor is actually called Awareness Through Movement Lessons. We shorten it to ATM, and that's where you would be on the floor, or they can be done actually in sitting or standing, or even on all fours or in a kneeling position. You could even do an awareness through movement lesson. One time I did it on the ski slopes. I ran into a Feldenkrais practitioner on the slopes, and he just said, hey, you want a Feldenkrais lesson at Copper Mountain? And I looked at my husband and we said, sure. There was a guy with us who was a friend of my father's, and he looked like he didn't really understand what what was going on and if he should say yes. But we had an amazing 2 hours of using awareness through movement, the Feldenkrais method, on the ski slopes. So you can do it from everything from just trying to get out of pain, trying to be able to walk better, move better, or even to improve your athletic prowess. I actually had a colleague in town who had worked with a professional athlete in another city, and the athlete was so excited because after working with him, his athletic prowess had really improved. He was playing much better than he had ever before, and he was so excited about it. And of course, my colleague was really excited about it because he thought, oh yeah, I'm really going to get all of these professional athletes now. And he said to his client, so did you give my number and my information to a lot of your teammates? And he said, are you kidding me? I'm not sharing this with anybody. This is the best kept secret I have. This is giving me the competitive edge. So good for him, not so great for my client, but you can use it at any level. And I have even used Feldenkrais once when I was working with a comatose patient. Now you're probably thinking, how did that work if you've got somebody who is in a deep coma? The other way you can do Feldenkrais is with private lessons, which is called functional integration, where the practitioner gently places their hands on you and moves you in very, very gentle ways. And I am here to tell you, it's like a little bit of heaven. When I first started my Feldenkrais training, all of my other classmates had had experience with, of course, the awareness through movement lessons and functional integration. And I had never even had a functional integration lesson in my entire life, so I had no idea what they were talking about. And when I received my first one, oh my goodness, it was like I was home. I had landed, and I never felt so comfortable in my body. It's the way that the quality of touch that we are taught to use when we do our training, and the quality of touch of a Feldenkrais practitioner is just so incredibly gentle. It's that the person is not necessarily trying to fix you or move you or heal you. We're just trying to get a sense of where you are. And it might sound really goofy, but our nervous systems are talking to each other and communicating to each other. So even as new students, we would freak out and say, how are we going to possibly know what to do, when we would ask our instructors? And they would look at us and they would say, trust us. You will know. And they were absolutely right. It's just like when you're dealing with a baby, when you have your newborn and your young child, how do you know what to do when the child can't talk to you yet? You know, you can sense by feeling and really paying attention. You're tuning in and really connecting on a molecular level. Your nervous systems are communicating with each other. It's the same thing if you work with animals, work with dogs or horses. Horses are the best. They are so incredibly sensitive. And I'm not really a horse person because I've never had the opportunity growing up to be around many of them. But as an adult, as a Feldenkrais practitioner, I've had the opportunity to be around horses quite a bit. And at first I was incredibly intimidated by it because, again, I don't know horses, but my first experience with it, the horse actually walked up to me and he lowered his head and he kind of noogied me a little bit with his great big head. And when I looked at him, he kind of winked at me, and it was almost like he was saying, don't you worry about it. We'll get through this together. I'll tell you what to do. So that's what we're doing as Feldenkrais practitioners when we're working with people. And another principle I did not share yet is that everything we do in Feldenkrais has no judgment attached to it. So not only is there no right or wrong, we do everything with no judgment. There's no judgment on that. So when I had this client, I was working in a subacute rehab facility, just picking up extra hours to supplement my income from my office and to help pay for my Feldenkrais training. And I worked a lot of weekends, and I walked in and this gentleman was in a deep coma, and I knew just by looking at him that he was miserable. He was horribly uncomfortable. And how did I know that? He was really bright red. He was sweating. He was hyperventilating. His pulse was just racing. His blood pressure was off the chart. And I just looked at him and I said, oh gosh, you just cannot be comfortable. So I closed the door and I just started doing some very gentle Feldenkrais with him. And it was just a matter of a few minutes when all of a sudden his color normalized, his blood pressure and his pulse normalized. He stopped sweating. His breathing was easy. And it was just to me, it felt like such a gift to be able to share this with him and to bring him to that physiological place of comfort and what we would call homeostasis. And I even used Feldenkrais when my mom was dying and she was in a coma. And, when I could tell that she was getting uncomfortable uncomfortable and her breathing was getting labored, I would just go over and start touching her and start moving her in that gentle Feldenkrais way. And I felt really good that I was able to provide her with that sense of comfort too. So Feldenkrais really truly is magic, and it works in such a deep level that if anybody asks you about it and you try and explain it and they poo-poo it, just refer them to me and I'll try and explain it, because it is a very difficult thing to try and communicate to people what the method is and how it works and what it can do for you. So now let's talk about chronic pain, something that I am very familiar with since I have had so much of it in my young life. My first experience being a chronic pain patient was at the age of 36. In my mid-30s, I was a chronic pain patient for 2.5 years with chronic back pain, and it was so out of control. I don't know if you've heard this from one of my previous episodes, but I was actually told I would never be able to do my grocery shopping and my laundry all in the same day because I would end up being bedridden because the arthritis in my spine was so severe. And now this ties into self-image as well, because I was a respiratory therapist at the time. I was very integrated and very committed to the Western medicine mindset, and I couldn't believe that they were just going to leave me like this in this much pain. And again, it was almost like what I had learned, what I knew as far as Western medicine was not serving me at all. And I felt like I was just being abandoned almost by the medical community. But as far as the belief system too, I think that deep somewhere in my subconscious, I did not see myself as a chronic pain patient, and this is not something that I wanted for the rest of my life. So I had no idea. I had never even heard of Feldenkrais when this happened to me. But after I hit rock bottom and I decided to try and figure it out for my own, I intuitively knew to start working kind of from a Feldenkrais perspective. I would get down on the floor. I would just try and make myself comfortable to take the pressure off of my back and give my muscles and my nerves a chance to calm down. And then when I did start moving, I would start moving in ways that were very, very slow, very minimal, minuscule movements, micro movements. And if I went a little too far, my back would certainly tell me, so I would back off. So basically, even without being a Feldenkrais practitioner or knowing anything about it, I actually figured it out for myself about how to move and teach myself to move, learn to move, just like I did when I was a little kid and when I was a baby. And that is so fascinating because that is exactly how the Feldenkrais method actually came to be in the first place. The founder of the method, Moshe Feldenkrais, was not only a master of movement, the man was an absolute genius, and he has the most fascinating history. Moshe Feldenkrais was born in Ukraine in 1904, and at the age of 14, he decided to immigrate to Israel by foot, all by himself. And there were many, many months where his family didn't even know where he was because there was no way to communicate with them. But at the time, of course, it was Palestine. That right there tells you a little bit about his personality and about his tenacity of spirit. And he was also a very active, athletic young man, and he actually injured his knee playing soccer. And this knee injury is why we have a Feldenkrais method now, because he would notice that there were times when his knee wouldn't bother him at all, and other times where he would be almost incapacitated with pain, and his knee would swell up and he could barely move. After struggling for years with this knee injury, he eventually did seek a consultation with an orthopedic surgeon who said, "Oh, your knee is never going to be right. We absolutely have to do surgery on it." So Moshe asked him what was the possibility of failure of the surgery, and he said, "Oh yeah, about 50-50. So Moshe says, "No, thank you. I'll figure it out on my own." And he decided to fix his knee himself. So through a process of using his mindful awareness, he noticed that certain movements and positions of his leg made his knee feel much stronger, more stable, and pain-free. On the other hand, he noticed that how other positions and movement patterns had the opposite effect, making his knee feel weak, unstable, painful, and swollen to the point where he couldn't even walk on it. So he continued this process of self-awareness, self-exploration, until eventually his knee injury was completely healed. So the point or the moral of the story is we can heal from anything, and there are always options. There are always ways of approaching a problem. You are not stuck forever with something, or you don't have to be. It was from that experience, that personal experience of self-healing, that he decided to dig a little bit deeper and a little bit further into the process of how the nervous system works, into the process of self-healing, how the mind and the brain and even our emotions impact our physical self. And he was an amazing man. He was actually a physicist, and he was a martial artist, an accomplished martial artist. He studied judo with the founder of judo, which is, I can't remember his name, Jigoro Kano, I think. I'm probably butchering his name. But anyhow, he was able to further develop his ideas of movement, physics, and the way through his martial arts training. And I think it's really lovely how the Feldenkrais method and martial arts are so closely related, which is something I didn't realize at first when I was doing my Feldenkrais training and just starting my martial arts training at about the same time. How interesting is that? And I didn't see the connection because it was a completely different world of lying on the floor trying to make myself comfortable and going to the dojo and trying not to get the stuffing beat out of me. But it took a few years, and I definitely saw the connection, and I use that same connection even to this day in my own personal life. And it's really boils right down to awareness through movement, awareness through self-exploration, the awareness of ourself and our environment, and the endless possibilities. There are no limits. The only limits that we really have are those that we impose upon ourselves, or those that we believe from other people when other people impose them upon ourselves. So this is just a little bit of an introduction to the Feldenkrais method. And if you're really interested, there is a fantastic book out by one of the pioneers in neuroscience and neuropsychology. He's a neuropsychiatrist and a researcher. And he actually has two books. So the first one is The Brain That Changes Itself, and it's stories of personal triumph from the frontiers of brain science. And it tells many stories of people who are able to recover from terrible, horrific injuries, brain traumas, stroke, chronic pain, and the role that neuroplasticity plays in this process of healing. And the author's name is Norman Doidge. The last name is Doidge, MD. And he has a second book out that is even better than the first one. And the title of that is The Brain's Way of Healing, and its remarkable discoveries and recoveries from the frontiers of neuroplasticity. So it's basically on the same subject, but it takes things a little bit further. And he does list several different methods that do help with the healing and the brain's way of healing using this nature's miracle of neuroplasticity. And Feldenkrais is one of the things that he does talk about in the book. So if you do get the book, read the chapter on Feldenkrais. And so you get a much more thorough history on the man and the method, which is really, part of the story and part of what does make the method so wonderful. And then the main reason why I'm bringing all of this up and I'm presenting it to you is just so you do know that there is always hope, and not to let anybody take away that hope. If you are dealing with something, either physical, mental, emotional, whatever, there are so many different things out there that you can try. There are so many different methods of healing. And if you do try one that it doesn't resonate with you, or, after maybe 2 or 3 sessions, don't continue with it. There are so many other things to try, so you don't ever have to be stuck. And to remember that our brain and our nervous system is inherently malleable, plastic, and flexible, so always able to change at every single stage of life, so we can have the quality of life that we want and deserve. Thanks again for listening. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.